Third panel of the day brings together an incredible lineup of thought leaders to speak about Ukrainian lessons in rapid adaptation. To moderate this discussion, we have back Dr. John Nagel. We've promoted him now from panelist to moderator. He's the Professor of Warfighting Studies, Department of Military Strategy, Planning and Operations at the Army War College. Dr. Nagel is a professorial lecturer at George Washington University, a West Point graduate and retired armor officer. He served in tank units in combat in Operation Desert Storm and Operation Iraqi Freedom. After retiring from the Army, he was a senior fellow and later president of the Center for New American Security and wrote the book Knife Fights, a memoir of the modern war. He has a master's and doctoral degrees in international relations from Oxford University and an MMAS from the Army Command and General Staff College. Please join me in a warm AUSA welcome for the panel.
Thank you, sir, for that kind welcome. I am absolutely delighted to be back on the stage. This time I get to ask questions instead of answering them. And I was asked some pretty tough questions, so you guys be ready. Looking at you. So we just had an absolutely spectacular presentation on Ukraine's battlefield innovations, including unmanned systems and rapid adaptation, provide absolutely critical lessons for land force transformation that literally no one else in the world can provide. And I think the panels so far have spoken about Ukraine as defending the front lines of freedom, but it is important to understand, I think, that Ukraine is giving back. And we just saw the minister ask for companies that were willing to test their systems and add actual battlefield conditions. I think that's an extraordinary offer, an extraordinary opportunity for the West to enhance deterrence and make war less likely. The question of this panel, the question we are seeking to answer today for all of you, is how can we apply Ukraine's streamlined feedback loops, responsive productions, ability to find innovative ways to encourage adaptation and break through bureaucracy to bring the best possible systems to the warfighter at the lowest possible cost in the least possible amount of time. And they are here today to tell us how they've done that, and frankly, I think, to ask for some of our help in how to do it even more effectively. So we've got a terrific panel, and I'm going to just introduce them very briefly, if I may, from my right all the way to my far right. Starting with Lieutenant General Curtis Buzzard. General Buzzard graduated from the United States Military Academy at West Point after it got easy. Come on. Kids these days. He's the commander of the United States Army Security Assistance Group Ukraine, or SAGU for short, and he leads NATO security assistance and training for Ukraine. A career infantryman, he previously commanded the Joint Multinational Readiness Center, which helped integrate warfighting training for all NATO countries. He's a terrific American expert on this panel, and certainly looking forward to your comments. Next to General Buzzard is Mr. Maximilian Fall. Max is the executive assistant to the president of I'm sorry, it's supposed to be. It's fine, we'll skip over, we're good. Right? We talked about this. Max is the executive assistant to the president of Rheinmetall. He is primarily responsible for managing Rheinmetall's global activities and relations with Ukraine. And I want to highlight to this audience and frankly to the world the leadership role that Rheinmetall has played in its support for Ukraine since the beginning of the war. And I'm interested to learn more about that from Max. Not next to Max, but still okay, is Ms. Alexandra Azarkina, or Sasha. She's a co-founder of We Build Ukraine Foundation, which is an independent think tank that drives reforms and investments to transform Ukraine's economy and infrastructure development. Previously, she served as a deputy minister of restoration of Ukraine, and importantly for this panel, she understands the relationship between a national economy and a country's ability to wage war. We heard on the last full panel that it is the defense industrial base that wins wars. That's an argument that I increasingly find persuasive. finally sitting in the right place, is Major General Vladimir Horbatyuk. General Horbatyuk is Deputy Chief of the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, where he oversees operational matters including staff coordination, planning, and management. He commanded the Ukrainian peacekeeping contingent in Kosovo in 2014, a reminder that before all of this awfulness, Ukraine was a contributor to global peacekeeping, and God willing, it will be again. It has other things to do right now. He then assumed leadership of the newly formed 54th Separate Mechanized Brigade of the Ukrainian Armed Forces in 2015. He was recognized for his valor during the Russo-Ukrainian War that preceded the full-scale invasion of February 2022, and later took command of Operational Command West, where much of the hardest fighting has happened. So it's an honor to have him here with us. And finally, Commander Robert Bronke is the commander of Ukrainian Unmanned Aerial Vehicle Forces. He has had an extraordinary military career. In 2022, he became the commander of a rifle platoon in the 2nd Assault Company of the 206th Separate Territorial Defense Battalion. Just a year later, he led the Strike Unmanned Aerial Systems Company of the 59th Separate Motorized Infantry Brigade, Birds of Magyar. A year later, he turned that company into the 414th Separate Battalion of Strike Unmanned Aerial Systems, Birds of Magyar, and that became a brigade a year later. That's an extraordinary series of military promotions in the crucible of combat. It reminds me, an American student of the American Civil War, how under the pressures of combat, the most capable rise very, very quickly and hugely impressively. In May 8th of 2025, Vladimir Zelensky, the president of Ukraine, awarded him the title Hero of Ukraine. So, we're on. So that's our panel. I want to commend AUSA for assembling such an extraordinary group of talent. I'd like to give each member of the panel a few minutes to provide some introductory comments, starting with General Buzzard and sort of proceeding in order. We'll go back to the Saja. It'll be great. I'll then ask each panel member a question or two before we turn the question over to you. And so, General Buzzard, sir, the floor is yours.
Well, thanks, John, and it's very tough to follow Georgi and the presentation before us. I don't have any video, but what remarkable things Ukraine is doing with respect to innovation. And good afternoon, everyone. It's great to be here, especially with colleagues from Ukraine that I've gotten to know over this last year, not just professionally, but also personally, and the friendships. I'm very grateful that they're here with us today. And I know they're really the ones you want to hear from, not me, but I'll just offer a couple thoughts up front. One, I admire Ukraine for its will, its endurance, and its adaptability. And I think those three things are lessons in and of themselves when you think about the scale of this conflict, how long they've been fighting, and how they've adapted. And they exemplify that idea that we talk about, adapt or die. They live that every day. They have a sense of urgency like no one else. And they've created a culture and a mindset, as you saw in the previous briefing and video, of adapting. And they've been doing this while the character of war is changing. We all know the nature of war, brutal contest of wills still exists and remains the same, but the character is changing with ways and means, persistent surveillance across multiple domains, whether it's drones, open source intelligence, social media, your electromagnetic spectrum, all the unmanned systems, human-machine integration, and just the importance of data, of live data, and the quantity of data, and how you manage and leverage that. But I would offer 5 just buckets of things to think about from a Ukrainian lesson. One, it's not sexy, but institutional lessons. This is a large-scale combat operation, probably nothing like we've seen since World War II. They've grown from 20 to over 100 brigades. How do you man, train, and equip that type of growth? How do you reconstitute forces in contact? How do you balance force generation with reconstitution? How do you replace leaders? They've taken a significant amount of casualties of leaders. How do you replace those at the same level? Second, and then the mass and scale defense industrial base, which will be touched on. Second, operational lessons. Many would argue that the defending is a stronger form of warfare. So how do you defend differently now with drones, with all the technologies, but then how do you still have the ability to maneuver and condition set for maneuver? How do you defend against all these long-range strikes, drones, cruise, ballistic missiles that you've seen at a scale that we don't see, and this happens every couple of nights in Ukraine. This isn't a one-off, but they're learning, again, operational lessons. How do you penetrate Russia's air defense and electronic warfare capabilities? This complex, and then I think a tactical thing we're seeing is this reconnaissance strike complex. Who would have thought at a company level you'd have ISR, precision munitions with FPVs or some other type of drones, so you can find, fix, finish at what you can do at much higher levels down at a company. And then there's all types of logistics lessons part of that operational. And we'll touch on it in a lot of detail, but third big lesson is the proliferation of unmanned systems. You know, drones from close to middle range to deep, the different payloads, how they navigate through the electromagnetic spectrum, all the electronic warfare, the unmanned surface vessels on the water, explosive laden vessels that are now armed and destroyed with a very small Navy, 40% of the Black Sea fleet, and then unmanned ground vehicles, the UGVs that are now used for logistics, for mining, for casualty evac. And now you're seeing these networked in a way where you have like a robotic layer of contact. And you're seeing a lot of these unmanned systems as marsupial systems. They carry other systems. And then just all the data associated with all these systems too. And I think one challenge we all have or want to take on is how you integrate this new technology with legacy systems. Fourth would be the electromagnetic spectrum and electronic warfare. This isn't a niche capability anymore. This is fundamental to success on the battlefield, to manage your own electronic warfare, to defend yourself, but also, their drones have to go through their own EW footprint to get to the enemy, and how you manage your own EW, you see yourself, you maneuver in the electromagnetic spectrum. And then last, I would just say, let's not forget the human dimension. Nature of war remains the same. Physical fitness, mental toughness, resiliency, managing the cognitive load of all this data, the value of training and leadership and how that impacts morale. So forces morale is at its height to fight Russia, but again, just a lot in the human. So final thoughts, I would say, obviously I'm very focused on doing everything I can to assist our Ukrainian partners, but we must do all we can to learn from this. Shame on us if we aren't focused on learning everything we can, so we're not paying the cost or the price of blood and treasure. And as Yorgi mentioned, I do think this fight is the ultimate battle lab. It's where you prove whether things work or they don't. And I think that all this, as we can see from watching and listening, applies globally, specifically to the Pacific and other places around the world. So again, thanks for the opportunity to make a couple comments, and I look forward to the rest of the panel. Thank you, sir. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you, John. Good afternoon, everyone. It's really great to be here. Sorry if I miserably failed with the seating order. Don't want to somehow confuse you. Thanks for the organization to have this panel here and also having the chance to sit on this panel with this wonderful guests and speakers. Rheinmetall as a company feels very privileged and proud that Ukraine is putting trust in our systems and products, and that we could help them with supplying various products since outbreak of this war. Not limited to this, Rheinmetall certainly also has been one of the first movers, if not the first mover, when it comes to build up cooperation with the Ukrainian industry. We created already 2+ years ago the very first joint venture with the Ukrainian industry to somehow bring technology from Germany, from our branches all over the world into the country, and also to somehow be part of this Ukrainian ecosystem, get the information, get the feedback, and somehow use this also as kind of a leverage to improve the products, not only for Ukraine, but also for all other customers all over the world. And there were certainly also some lessons learned, and I want to keep this brief, but I think everyone is aware. For obvious reason, mass still matters, and with mass certainly comes also the part of the economies of war. So we have to not only ensure that we ramp up capabilities and capacity all over the globe, we also have to take care that we manage the supply chain properly and be able to supply that huge amount of products on a reasonable way to the country. We've certainly also learned that yes, drones are important, but obviously also conventional systems still play a significant role on the battlefield, and that's something that we also could keep in mind and ensure that we not only keep those systems in service and maintain them properly, but also take care that we bring in technology into those vehicles and develop them to the next level. And last but certainly not least, and this has been seen also in the keynote, adaptability is key. We have to take care that we bring in technology, that we learn from the lessons that made on the battlefield and improve the products to the best to support and make them even more competitive on the battleground. Pleasure to be here. Thank you.
It's very helpful, Max. Thank you. Sasha.
It's an honor to speak about Ukrainian lessons, which I hope would be not just observed but also learned. And I'm a living example of a whole society approach in Ukrainian defense, and my job here is to talk about the core principles which determine the war effort. It's all about the decentralization efforts, it's all about the creativity, and it's all about the way how exactly the army, the civilian ministries, the private business, and civil society are working together. And I hope afterwards I will have to show some slides and we'll go through the lessons.
Do you want to do that now?
Oh yeah, we can jump in. So the main thing, what we heard here today, I would kindly ask to show the slides, please. I decided to use some of the, well-known heroes to explain how exactly these principles work. And the first one, which really need to be here, is the value-driven fight. It's not only a data-driven fight. Because when you don't have enough data or your communications are disturbed, it's the values which actually matters. And that gives them substance of the efforts which are done together by the army, government, civil society, and business working together. Like one of the many examples. In the beginning of the Post Revolution, I was part of the Ministry of Infrastructure, and my boss, Alexander Kubrakov, was in the war cabinet together with Zelensky. He sent me to Poland to organize the military logistics and the efforts which were led by General Donny from the US side. From Ukrainian side, it became real because it was the cooperation of the 8 volunteering truck drivers, financially supported by Ukrainian businesses, coordinated by civilian ministry, and of course in cooperation with the army. There are many other efforts like that. The presentation we just seen from the Minister of Digital Transformation is the same pattern. The same happening now in the masses of our soldiers being trained by civilians, NGOs actually being present on the battlefield. The projects we had on the passive protection for the energy infrastructure, it would never be done if it was only the army effort. It can be done only as a whole nation effort, only when we're working together. To make this happen, for sure we need a lot of trust. We have the ability to make things work with duct tape and prayer. That's the thing which is the reality, and it's not because life is good and we have a scrutiny of the resources. But the reality is, when we do not have enough resources, we're working with shelf solutions. And we already heard today about this dilemma of the very expensive missiles tackling the Shaheeds. You know that the best solution, which is now like is equivalent, is the Shaheed, like a drone against the drone. So all those things are happening. But before that, we managed to gain some success with a heavy Soviet-era machine gun, relying on the civilian infrastructure of the sonars, which gave us the early warning system. So all of the things are happening. We're all thinking that there is a necessity to have this adaptability and to have the R&D as a part of the fight. And just to emphasize on what was already said by our colleagues from the Ministry of Digital Transformation, to make the R&D part of the fight, you need to actually start reforming the contracting processes. In Ukraine, all those things are still undergoing, and many things are happening not because they are well, thought ahead, but just because it's common sense approach. But the reality is, in an ongoing situation, to make the R&D part of the fight, you need to have an almost subscription contract, where it's not a goodwill of the producer to have all the trainings, to have all the updates, to have all the innovations and the constant communication with the end user, but the part of the deal. It's happening now, again, only because the business is the part of the fight. And the only way to make the success when you're talking about the adaptability is actually to make sure that the producer and the end user are acting as a one. To strengthen that, we also had a great experience working with American partners on the project like Frank and Sam, and the big safari things which are done under 80% solution was the best and unique experience for all of us. Working side by side, Ukrainian American engineers created the tools which are now quite an exclusive and incredible, and again it only worked while it was flexible and not those type of the approach when you have the R&D stage, then you have the production stage, then you have the scaling stage. Next slide, please. So we do understand that all of that is happening at the same time, but we do understand that the main challenge now is actually access to the finances. All the other things, like the scaling innovations, human resources, digitalization of everything, and the rapid innovations, they require financial resources. And the financial resources given to the businesses, it's easy path. Given to Ukrainian producers, it's just the best action. And the last slide, please. Here I can really arouse you the one main goal. It's a call for coordination. Now in a very difficult situation, and you know better than I that the front line isn't stable, and it's not moving in the right direction. And while we are talking about the eastern flank deterrence, we need to think about Ukraine not as about the country who is gaining the time for Western partners, but as a proper ally which can extract the flank and can be part of European theory victory. But for that, we really need to scale up the coordination. When I had a privilege of American leadership since the beginning of the full-scale invasion. Now we all know the necessity of having 5% of the leadership and the NATO commitment. It's all understandable, but it won't work if we will not scale up the coordination between the partners. One of the solutions we are working on as a think tank is creation of the independent procurement agency outside of Ukraine, being managed by professionals, being super coordinated with the nations who are donating to Ukraine, but really to be able to build a trust of American, European, Ukrainian producers and being financed by law. 40, 50 billion US dollars, that's the gap which we still have for the next 2 years to be able to fight. It would be great to have this loan back up with the Russian frozen assets, but the reality is it's possible to do it within the partners and allies efforts. It's just the efforts we need to start buying things together. Imagine if it's family deal. And one thing, it's just to coordinate, keep talking, sharing your plans, thinking how you can learn from each other, and maybe planning a vacation together. That's one way of the coordination. To have a mortgage together, to plan a construction together, to really be able to share those plans, that's a new level of the coordination which is needed. It's also a shortcut for the reforms for Ukrainian side. You know the challenges which we are facing. Intellectual property reform, transfer of the technologies. There are a lot of the bureaucracy, even in Ukraine as a fighting country. But having this new tool that might be the way out. There is a short window of opportunity to put Ukraine in a position of strength. And we really hope that we can use it. Thank you.
That was a stirring call to action, Sasha. Thank you. You're the mistress of metaphors. Terrific analogies. Those of us who have engaged in home reconstruction projects while living in a house, I think your metaphor sings to the difficulty and the necessity of what wants to be done. So thank you. General Hormachuk, you sir have big shoes to fill, I think. You also have slides, sir?
Yep, I also have slides, thank you, sir. Where we're living, thank you, General Roberts, as I mentioned before. So it's a huge honor to be here. Thank you for having us. And today we'll briefly share 2 lessons learned by General Staff of the Armed Forces in Ukraine. The 11 years of Russian-Ukrainian war, 4 of which have taken the form of war of attrition. As it was mentioned before, I wouldn't advise anyone. 3 lessons, I believe, will be very helpful for you. So next slide. Previously, Georgi presented you tremendous presentation and showed you what we have achieved now and where we are now. I try to recall some few samples from my experience, how it started. So let me begin with the story that started early March 2022 with the battle for Kyiv. Ukrainian intelligence discovered a logistic hub of Russian troops in Polysky, the western north of Kyiv. Early in the morning of March 16, the raid began. First time in this war, ISR drone, backed with Starlink communication, enabled command and control of the battle space, even with the high level of EW. This enabled us to move our 152mm howitzer to the so-called gray zone, directly across from the enemy. We precisely adjusted our fire despite enemy helicopters hunting us. One of the shells hit the warehouse with a missile-explosion, large-scale explosion. This mission served as a groundbreaking precedent in modern warfare. It demonstrated a non-standard use of heavy artillery, but more important, effective integration of technology, drones and Starlink, and the flawless synchronization of efforts of various units. The destruction of logistic hub and destruction of enemy's logistic were crucial to slow down Russian advance. This was the start of the age of modern warfare, a time driven by exponential technological and technical advances, which brings us to how we fight today. Next slide, please.
You didn't tell them that was you on the left slide, right?
Come
Oh.
on. So this is how we fight today. First, 1,100 kilometers of strategic defense in front line from the state of Ukraine. 8 operational tactical task forces in process transition to the Army Corps, involving over 100 brigades. The theater of war spans nearly all physical domain, as well as advanced confrontation in the cyber domains. Every 24 hours will eliminate an average 1,000 enemy personnel while observing dozens of tactical assaults. I don't want to downplay the role of artillery and anti-tank missile, but today approximately 80% of successful engaged targets at the tactical level are struck by UAVs. At the strategic level, we are increasingly relying on UAVs-based weaponry to project military power in alignment with the strategic objective, particularly against enemy centers of gravity. This shift also has direct impact on procurement strategy, and defense industrial plan requires accelerated adaptation to produce, scale, and sustain UAV-centric firepower across all levels of command. And finally, 1,239 days of unwavering Ukrainian resilience, we are a fundamentally different army that we were 4 years ago. A transformation born of an existential challenge to our nation. It is 2025 and Russia is now in its 4th year of trying to achieve at least one of its so-called special operation strategic objectives. We are clearly on the right and honorable path. I wanted to bring you a gift, but Ukrainian military souvenirs made at the Russian military factories are a bit too large for my suitcase. So instead, here are a few lessons on a piece of paper. Let's begin. Next slide, please. First, a mobilized army is not a problem. It is potential the General Staff must unleash. The General Staff of Armed Forces of Ukraine is leading the mobilized army towards victory. This is fundamentally different from commanding a small professional force that has spent years training on military ranges. These are yesterday's mathematicians, scientists, civilian servants, artists and teachers who have reinforced the core of our professional military. For me, as an old-school infantry officer, such a unit initially looked like nightmare, but that was the premature and inaccurate judgment. In reality, I assure you, this is Ukrainian superpower. Former civilians, driven by will to win and enriched with the personal life experience, demonstrate extraordinary speed to learn and impressive quality in execution combat tasks. Major Brody is a great example how he transformed from the previously successful entrepreneur to the super effective warrior and leading command of a main system of Ukraine, force of Ukraine. It is the task for the General Staff and all levels of command to continuously find the most effective way to apply this human capital, identify and cultivate their best quality, organize them effectively and train in the military principle. Second, a war of attrition means a deficit of everything, constant and everywhere. The enemy fully expect that we will be the first to run out every kind of resources. Many of you are familiar with the different model of planning and calculating the resources required for the various types of operation. But the real art begins when we are dealing with operations that don't end, and with resources that are always insufficient or severely insufficient. So what do you do when typical capability falls short? You build asymmetric ones, cheap and scalable technologies when applied creatively begin to challenge the basic map of war of attrition. The new UAV-based fire assets are challenging traditional ones. This doesn't mean that conventional artillery is obsolete. However, the modern kill zone along the forward edge of the battlefield is rapidly evolving due to the widespread use of cheap and accessible strike capability to both sides. Meanwhile, protective systems continue to lag behind. Third, technology matters a lot, but only in the human hands. Back in 2022, UAVs were used predominantly for ISR and from time to time as a dropper drones. Now, in the 2025, it is nearly impossible to conduct 4 hours of 6 warfighting functions without unmanned systems. Here are some practical examples. Striking Russia's centers of gravity with unmanned system at depth up to the 2,000 kilometers. Logistics using ground-based robotic platforms at the forward edge of the battlefield. Battalion brigade situation awareness by multi-rotor drones. Employing UAVs interceptors against aerial threat. Maritime security defense and strike mission conducted by unmanned surface vessels in the Black Sea. It is not the future, it is the routine reality of how we wage our war. We move to the systematic employment of technology. Their rapid expansion is no accident. It is the result of the ability to learn fast, adapt even faster, and scale what works. Behind every technological breakthrough stands our real strategic advantage, the superpower you already know. People. A mobilized army with an extraordinary capacity to learn and will to win. These lessons, learned through enormous effort and the uncoverable sacrifices of our people, and the foundation of our rapid transformation. Our soldiers are champions of adapting to rapidly changing combat environment, and the General Staff must match that, becoming champions of planning and fighting wars under conditions we face. We work on this every day, including with the many of you here in this conference hall. Your personal support in this massive and unprovoked war is tangible. Thank you, we will not forget it, and you will always be able to count on us. Slava Ukraini!
Героям слава. Thank you, General. Roger.
Бажаю здоров'я. В армії України мене називають Мадяром. Я польовий командир бойових пілотів дронів Збройних сил України.
Hi to all. I would like to recommend myself as a field commander of all unmanned forces of Ukraine.
Путінська пропаганда каже, що я відношуся до одного з найбільш розшукуваніших ворогів Росії, тому я вам не обіцяю повторної зустрічі, але скажу абсолютно чорно-білі речі.
Putin's propaganda named me as the most wanted enemy, so it can be that you see me last time here. I will tell you next.
Сьогодні я об'єдную 12 підрозділів пілотів.
Nowadays I'm running and commanding over 12 military units of pilots.
95% з них це люди цивільні до початку війни. Це бізнесмени, це спортсмени, це юристи, це співаки, це хто завгодно, але не військові люди. 95%.
95% of personnel in my brigades under my command is the civilian people in original life. This is singers, DJs, artists, and other people, but none of them was doing military service before. 95%.
Загальна наша чисельність складає 2% від всієї армії України.
Our overall percentage of the Ukrainian army is only 2%.
Ми знищуємо одного з 3 одиниць живої сили ворога і одну з кожних 3 ворожих цілей.
But we kill every third enemy personnel and every fourth strike on the battlefield.
Путін, що обіцяв захопити нас за 3 дні, 3,5 роки, навчив нас захищати свою батьківщину, своїх дітей, свою землю.
Putin, who was trying to conquer us in 3 days, give us a lesson how to defend ourselves for next almost 4 years, defending our land, our children, and our civilian people.
Абсолютно очевидно, що ми не бачимо ніякого закінчення війни. Ні завтра, ні через місяць, ні, ймовірно, в цьому році.
We should also understand that we cannot expect end of the war, not tomorrow, not after tomorrow, in 1 day, in 1 week, 1 month, or even more.
Тому ми абсолютно прагматично вираховуємо своє майбутнє і бачимо найбільші загрози, котрі стосуватимуться, якщо не зупиниться ця війна, великої кількості країн, які будуть тягнути в подальшому світі.
So we should be pragmatically understanding that if it will not go on pause for next moments, a lot of countries can join this war also.
Перша загроза – це Путін направляє на війну більше піхоти, ніж ми можемо щомісяця знищити.
Nowadays the biggest threat is Putin sending more personnel to the battlefield that we can kill as of now.
Це перший виклик.
This is the first challenge.
Друге, Путін знайшов дуже зручну, дешеву і ефективну зброю залякування населення цивільного України і знищення нашої інфраструктури. Назва її «Шахет».
Second, Putin has found the best cost ratio solution for threatening civilians. It's called Shahed. It's also damaging our infrastructure a lot.
Третє. Всі, хто хотів в Україні воювати, вже воюють.
The third challenge is everyone who would like to join Ukrainian army, he is already joining and he is already on the battlefield.
Тому ми не розраховуємо на манну небесну з неба.
So should not expect more civilian join army in next months.
Але ми знаємо, що з цим робити, і робимо це на власному досвіді, на власній крові, за допомогою підтримки партнерів.
But we know what to do on the battlefield, and thanks to the partners who supporting us, and with this support we can go further.
Вже не залишилося такого танка у світі, котрий не зупиняється від ураження дроном вартістю $300-400. Не існує такого танку.
You should understand that you cannot find a single tank in the world which can go against a big drone which costs only $300 to $500. There is no such tanks who can go through it.
Готовий прийняти будь-якого розміру парі, який би не був там захищений, буде зупинений дроном, зробленим з українських компонентів. І тому я стверджую про те, що українські дрони на сьогоднішній день найкращі в світі.
So if everyone would like to bet on this, I'm ready to do it. Tank against FPV. So that's why I'm fully sure that Ukrainian drones are the best one nowadays.
Дрони створюють сьогодні кіл-зону, яка на даний момент в Україні становить близько 20 кілометрів навколо смуги фронту.
Nowadays drones creating a kill zone of up to 25 to 30 kilometers.
Тому наступний виклик – це заміщення української піхоти на наземні роботизовані комплекси, що заберуть на себе всю логістику, що стосується смуги фронту.
So our further step that we should exchange our infantry on the battlefield and all the logistics to ground control the unmanned systems.
Третє – це багатошарова ешелонована стіна, значно вище китайської стіни, що зупинить в повітрі все, що летить в нашу сторону з дронів ударних авіацій.
Next step we should build a China wall which will defend our borderline and will stop anything which is trying to go through it either from the ground or through the air.
І цю стіну ми сьогодні створюємо.
And nowadays we are creating this wall.
Адже коли Путін відпускав 100 шахедів по Україні, він обіцяв 500, і ми відносилися до цього дуже, як не до серйозної загрози.
As you can remember, during the times we were receiving 100 shaheds per day, Putin was saying, hey, we will do 500, and we were laughing on this.
Сьогодні нам взагалі не смішно, адже 400 відмітку ми вже перетнули.
But nowadays, no laughing in the room, as we already gone over 400 per day average.
Наш досвід буде безцінним для всього притомного світу, тому що будь-яку країну може очікувати саме така перспектива.
You should also understand that our experience is super valuable for all of you here, as none of the country has this kind of experience nowadays.
Я не знаю, яка з країн-членів НАТО спроможна захистити якесь конкретне своє місто, приймаючи 7 днів на тиждень, хоча б по 200-300 шахедів до зупинки.
Please answer me any city of the NATO countries who can defend himself during the 7 days in a row attack of shaheds with 500 each day.
Тому ваші національні безпеки вимагають досить оперативного перегляду.
So your national security doctrines should be changed and upgraded.
Я мало їжджу за кордоном, це мій другий візит, і завтра в цей час я вже буду на фронті.
I'm visiting abroad countries very rare. This is only my second visit during the war. As you should understand that tomorrow I will be already on the battlefield.
Але я побував рік тому на одній військовій базі одного з членів НАТО у Європі.
But I would like to tell you a story that 1 year ago I was visiting NATO allies military base in Europe.
Мені показали такий організований військовий об'єкт з купою техніки. відповідного кольору, відповідної якості.
I was shown a really huge military base with a lot of techniques standing there and how it was defended and so on.
Мене спитали, що я думаю з приводу того, що побачив.
And the guys asked me, hey, what do you think about this base?
Моя відповідь їх не дуже потішила.
And they were not happy to hear my answer.
Підходячи ближче, ніж на 10 кілометрів до того місця, 4 розрахунки українських пілотів за 15 хвилин перетворили на це місце в Перфект.
They answered the following. The 4 mile battle crews standing only 10 kilometers away from this base can destroy it fully in 15 minutes. It looks like a Pearl Harbor during the Second World War.
Я це кажу не для того, щоб когось налякати.
I'm here not to threaten you.
Я кажу, що ці технології настільки доступні і дешеві, що якщо вони потраплять в руки терористів, тих 100 терористів переверне устрій будь-якої країни.
You should remember that all these technology are so cheap and so easily taken. So if it will go to the terrorist hands, only 10 terrorists can change anything in your country.
Тому наша з вами боротьба, наша з вами спільна боротьба з партнерами, вона сьогодні в наших спільних інтересах.
So our battle is not only our battle, it's battle of all of us here against as a civil war, as a civilization against terrorists.
Наша ціною життів, а ваша ціною здобуття нашого досвіду, котрий ми передамо тим притомним країнам світу, котрі за добро і котрі підтримують Україну.
We pay lives to this to get this expertise, but you can get this expertise out of us, and we will support you the same way you supported us during this war.
Дякую за увагу.
Thank you very much.
I'm astounded by this opportunity to learn from heroes of a war that is ongoing, a war as clear a fight of good and evil as the cartoons that Sasha showed us. So it's been extraordinary work to give us all the chance to learn, and so much to learn. That's where I want to start. General Buzzard, you stated, you concluded your remarks by saying shame on us, essentially, if we don't learn everything we can from the sacrifices the Ukrainians are making. Question I have for you is how effectively you think our Army and our joint force are at learning those lessons. And I have a question already from someone in the audience that I'm going to tack on to make it harder for you. What are the risks? I'm here for you, sir. What are the risks? These was easy for you. What are the risks of learning the wrong lessons, and how can we make sure that we don't learn the wrong lessons from the lessons that Ukraine is paying for?
Well, those are two great questions. I think first we should be asking ourselves constantly, are we learning everything we can? And we should probably never be satisfied with our efforts to try to learn as much as we can. In both my headquarters, we are focused on lessons. I had several Army lessons learned in my headquarters. TRADOC, the Chief Staff of the Army, has been very focused on this. TRADOC did a lessons learned sprint back in the fall, very focused on this. On the NATO side, JTAC focused on this also. But the scale of this conflict is just so big, and there's so many lessons. There's lessons about our own equipment and their performance there. There's lessons about all the technology and innovation they're talking about. And it's not even sometimes, I think, so much about the technology. It's about all the tactics, techniques, and procedures on how they're learning to employ this capability. There's just so many things there. So the scale of this is enormous. So I know our chief is very focused on this. The U.S. Army's Transformation and Contact Initiative is meant to bring in lessons from Ukraine, as well as inject new technology, many of which is what they're using. But I just think we should all be challenging ourselves, and every day, am I doing enough to learn from this conflict? Because someday down the road, it's gonna cost us in treasure. In terms of the wrong lesson? I mean, that's another great question. I think that we, first, if you're focused on lessons, then you got to think about how do you apply the lessons of Ukraine to how we would fight. And some of the things they've done have been driven, as they mentioned earlier, out of necessity because they didn't have some of the capability we have. So I think it's making sure we understand how they're fighting and the capabilities they're using, and then we assess it through the lens of our own capabilities. And where could some of theirs replace ours? Where could they augment ours? Where could they layer ours? I think about drones layered with long-range fires, with air-launched missiles. How do you leverage that? How do you, the small, attritable, I think you're seeing us shift to very much focus, particularly at the squad, platoon, battalion level, on small, attritable phones as a weapon, not a high-end capability. So again, I think we have an opportunity to learn a lot here, apply it to our own army, and look at where we could replace or augment, or where this technology, when added to our existing conventional capability, could make us even better. So that's where I think a lot of this goes. But those are, again, two great questions I ask myself all the time and think about and wonder, and if you're not intellectually curious about this and thinking that way, then you're not being a good professional military person. So thanks. Thank you, sir.
Max, I'd like to have you talk a little bit of more length. You mentioned this briefly, but I think there's a terrific opportunity here because Rheinmetall rapidly secured scalable, responsive production inside Ukraine, which was an act of enormous courage, I would say, on the part of Rheinmetall as a company, and you were taking risks with your personnel to provide more responsive, more capable weapon systems to our Ukrainian friends. Can you talk about that risk calculus and how you would encourage other defense industry to think about those risks versus the rewards they gain?
Yeah, thanks, John, for the question. Yeah, certainly doing so comes with risk, and you have to consider if as a company and as a person you want to take this risk. But for Rheinmetall, in particular for our CEO, the team that was working on these topics from the very first morning, it was clear that we have to do so because Ukraine and the Ukrainian armed forces, the Ukrainian people are fighting for our freedom, are fighting to protect our freedom, our values. And it was crystal clear for Rheinmetall, it was a very small team in the very beginning, that we have to do our utmost to support. And in the very beginning, when we considered what we can do, it was for sure deliver whatever we have in stock, whatever we can deliver on short notice, what we are able to produce in our own companies. But this certainly is in the very first moment at least limited. We are taking all the means to scale up within Rheinmetall. But we also said we have to support Ukraine in country. We have to take care that they can independently secure the supply, also with the means they are having. They have a great industry, they have great people, and that's why we consider, okay, we have to build kind of cooperation with them, and we made the move to jump into finding partners, build a cooperation, and now we are working intensively together with our partners, and this is running pretty smooth. So it has been a success, and I can only encourage everyone that if you want to support Ukraine, it's not only about delivering, it's also to somehow go into the country, find partners, use the experience and the valuable lessons learned by the armed forces, adopt those technologies and that knowledge, bring it into the products, scale up, and help the best way possible. Thank you very much.
Sasha, I've got a terrific question from the audience, which notes the unification of the military, the civilians, the government inside Ukraine, the sort of national resilience that you spoke to with your superpower and superhero slides. But what the audience would like to know from you is what recommendations do you have from policymakers from their countries, not from Ukraine, to learn those lessons in particular in how to maximize the potential of the defense industrial base to help Ukraine, but also to help our collective defense.
One very practical advice, if you're the and you have your traditional way of talking to the consumer, to the army, you're getting the requests, you're listening to the demands, but it shouldn't be just that. It should be like a daily work together. And that's the only way you can make a real product when it's about this level of the challenges we have now, with the technologies, the necessity to be adaptive, to take the decisions in this place and that moment. But if you are the society, and that's the moment just to start talking very directly about the threats we are all facing now. And that's something which is quite hard everywhere in Western countries. We as Ukrainians, we keep coming here and saying like the terrible things which are happening to us, but all the Western nations, even the best supporters of Ukraine, like, yeah, you can tell us it would never happen to us. And I hope it will never happen to you. But that's the moment when it needs to be a whole nation dialogue. It wouldn't be for me, as a person being outside the defense, before the February 2022, to understand all the things. But now, each of us, all Ukrainians, are sitting in the same boat, and the boat is sinking, and the boat is being attacked, and a lot of other challenges. But when you are together, you can understand that. I hope it will never happen to the Western nations, but that's the language we need to change now here. We are at war. You are at war. In Ukraine, we keep hearing this idea that there is a lack of transparency on the length of the 1,000 kilometers and the depth of the 40 kilometers now, right? That's the lack of transparency we have. Include deep strikes which have attacks to the cities as a whole country. It's the same here. It's the same here, even if it's only hybrid attacks now. So that's the open dialogue with your society.
Thank you. General Horbachev, you have, as we've seen, fought the Russians on the ground, almost face to face. And I appreciate very much what Sasha just said. I agree. I think that the war that Russia is conducting is against all of them, against all of you. But you have fought this more directly than perhaps anyone in the room. What would you like to tell this audience about fighting against the Russians?
Thank you for the question. I think Mother already gave a lot of advices from the strategic level to the tactical level. But I would like to add, don't trust Russia. Remember that any agreement with them doesn't go through the paper. And Winston Churchill said that all generals preparing for the previous war learn from us, help us to resist, and help us to prevent Russian further aggression against any country in the Western world.
Thank you, sir. And finally, Madhya, the minister spoke to the army of drones and the extraordinary success that the birds of Madhya have had as a result of the army of drones incentives. Can you talk through how you incentivize that kind of fighting ability from your soldiers?
Враховуючи, що ви обіцяли складні питання.
You were saying it will be a hard question, but it's now still an easy one.
Складним питанням
Hard for us, hard for everyone else. It's easy for him.
Окей. Питання успіху в площині людей. Людей мотивованих, людей, які добровільно стали на захист своєї батьківщини.
Number one rule is that the personnel we are inviting should be highly motivated, as these people come to us to defend their country voluntarily.
Наступний крок – це реалізація побудови підрозділу, аналогічно побудові приватної компанії.
Next step is organizing our military unit the same way if you're going to organize a business.
Де кожен може дуже швидко вирости в ієрархії компанії, кожен може брати на себе цілі проекти, реалізовувати, відповідати за них і бути успішним.
Everyone in our military unit can be promoted for its innovations or would things be done. Also, everyone can take a project to run or command on.
Бачите, яка в мене маленька зірочка. Я не отримував військової освіти, не будував військової кар'єри. Просто прийшли на люди.
It's easy to see my only one star on my suit. It just says that I was never doing military service before 2022. So I came here not for doing military service, but
Мій побратим, котрий заступив командиром 414-ї бригади, яку ми разом побудували, він заступив на цю посаду у званні молодшого лейтенанта.
I would like to underline that after I was promoted to the commander of unmanned system forces, my brother-in-arm got to run the brigade, and his rank is second lieutenant only.
Але в мирному житті він тренував 2000 дітей.
But in civil life, before the war, he was doing a training for Taekwondo for 2,000 children.
А тепер він керує декількома тисячами військових, які знають свою справу.
Nowadays, he is running 2,000 the military personnel brigade.
Системний підхід, компетентна мобілізація, компетентне забезпечення засобами, компетентне застосування. Ось основні 4 пункти успішності будь-якого військового.
So first of all, you should have the right people, the right equipment, the right tactics, and to run this in the proper way. All this will provide you the result.
А дрони тільки тому, що дрони на сьогоднішній день є найбільш актуальною сучасною зброєю.
And when we come to drones, it's very easy. This is just an instrument in the hands of the soldier, and this is what we have now.
Thank you, sir. I have several very similar questions from the audience that hurt my heart. I am the only former armor officer on the panel. And a number of people have asked about them. Rheinmetall obviously is hurt by this as well. Have asked, in this age of drone warfare, does it make sense for NATO countries to continue to invest in tanks? I know my answer, but I'm going to invite the panel to speak. I'm going to choose everybody.
Well, I think that, and I would tell you, and I think General Horachek would probably have some great answers on a great answer on this also too, but I still think there is a need for mobile protected firepower and ability to rapidly move soldiers to a battlefield protected. And the Bradley in particular is a fighting vehicle that the Ukrainians have valued tremendously due to the firepower of the main gun and the protection it provides and the ability, when conditions are set, and that's really the big piece of this, when conditions are set, to then maneuver rapidly with overwhelming force, and that gets to the offensive nature that we just aren't seeing right now because of the fact that we're in an attritional style of warfare on a very, on the defense. And so, but I think, as I think towards the future, back to the question about learning the right lessons or not, I see a tank with electronic warfare, EMS, able to detect where there's signature spectrum analyzer. I see it with drones that are able to look prior to it, beyond the next intervisibility line. Why shed blood at first contact when you can let a drone or an unmanned system do this? I see vehicles that are dropping off, unmanned ground vehicles to go out as censored or as armed with drones and set conditions for a rapid move to gain terrain, to penetrate, and then exploit that. And that's where I think that we've not seen, particularly Russia's ability to do that either. It's been a bite and hold based off their artillery. So I think there's opportunities to blend all this and to make sure we're incorporating the best out of what the Ukrainians are doing with the best out of what we have. Probably a level of protection too that we need to look at. This gets back to learning about our own equipment that the Ukrainians are fighting, whether it's the M1 or the Bradley. What things have they done to protect that system from drones? How are they getting back to the condition setting for the employment of that capability? If you just roll out the capability, which Russia does quite a bit, you're a prime target for Major Bradley over there, who is perfectly happy to render your equipment destroyed. Right, so again, this is where we've got to be learning from what's going on this conflict. Max, you have an opinion on that, Axel?
Yeah, thank you for this question. I couldn't agree more to what the General just mentioned. So I think at the very end, the war shows drones and nowadays play a significant role on the battlefield, but so do other conventional systems. There will always be a need for main battle tanks, modified vehicles, artillery pieces for the indirect fire. So this will also in the future play a significant role, and so armies and countries need to invest in this equipment as well. What I think is key when you consider this equipment is that we consider the lessons that we learned from the war and adapt that into those vehicles. So the main battle tank in the future might have additional features to compare to those equipment that has been used a couple of years ago. So it's about learning, and the key question certainly is then do we learn enough? Are we able to adopt whatever is required to improve those systems and bring them to the latest level? But however, this certainly needs to be said, there will remain an urgent need for conventional armaments, material, and investment in that will urgently be required.
Thank you, Max. I'm going to let General Kraetzer answer that question as well, and then we're going to run the panel this way. We're down to 5 minutes, so 1 minute each. What do you want the audience to remember from this panel? So General Kraetzer first, role of tanks in the future battlefield, and then we're going to run the whole panel back to me. 1 minute each. What do we want the audience to remember?
As infantry commander, I still think that armor vehicles still, we still need to weld them, but the question is that probably we need to reconsider their usage. We need to reconsider its modernization and protection, and also we need to think to build them as a land system as well.
Thank you, sir. And so, a minute each, closing comments, please, Becca.
Мені для фінального слова не потрібно хвилину, я обіцяю 20 секунд вкластися.
I don't need a minute, I will take only 20 seconds.
Сьогодні в Україні, українськими воїнами, за підтримки партнерів, пишеться сучасна світова доктрина застосування безпілотних систем.
Nowadays, with Ukrainian soldiers, we created a new modern warfare doctrine of unmanned system forces.
І ця сучасна світова система в подальшому має лягти у системи ваших національних безпек.
And this modern doctrine should jump into your national security systems.
І тоді ви ніколи не будете мати перед собою найскладніше запитання, що відповісти своїм дітям та мамі, коли я повернуся додому.
So in the future, you will not have hard questions from your children when your father will come back.
Це все.
That's all.
Sir.
I'm going to use my time just to express from the bottom of my heart, on behalf of all Ukrainians, express a huge word of appreciation for your support, your dedication. I would like to ask you to be more decisive.
Next.
Yeah, so Ukraine is fighting to protect our freedom. They are having the hardest job, certainly paying the highest prices, unfortunately. We, to a certain degree, have a way easier job, but we have the obligation to learn whatever could be learned, to improve products, to adopt technology, and to support by these means Ukraine to whatever extent required.
My final slide was an Avengers famous scene in New York that was Captain America who saved the day. That's Captain America which had the chance to save Ukraine. And the reason why Captain America saved everyone, because he started just to show the other superheroes what their job is. Do their best, and that's the most important moment now.
I would just come back to the initial comments I had about the big lessons are the will, the endurance, and the adaptability of the Ukrainians, and we should be challenging ourselves and probably never be satisfied. Are we learning as much as we can? And definitely, are we learning more than our adversaries? We have to be confident that we are and remain committed to that. Aside from obviously helping Ukrainians, but the learning piece is just so fundamental. We need to be here.
Thanks. I've been on a lot of panels. I'm very old. I've never been on a panel, I don't think, this extraordinary, where there has been so much to learn and so much at stake. And I'd like to commend AUSA again for pulling together at the right time, the right people to learn the right lessons to keep my country, your countries, and the free world safe. And I'd like the audience to join me in the Slava Ukraina. Glory to Ukraine.
Heroes.
Glory to Ukraine.